Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. You might have heard that St. Petersburg is known as the most beautiful city in Russia and one of the most beautiful cities in the world. It's a city where every building, every street, every detail is literally soaked in Russian history. St. Petersburg is also often called Venice of the North because of its unique architecture and numerous amount of canals and bridges. The city is also very famous for its special creative atmosphere that attracts artists, poets and dreamers from all over the world. But depending on the mood and the weather, the city can be different and diverse, unlike any other cities in the world. It can be dark, gloomy and depressive. Even famous Russian writers such as Pushkin, Gogol and Dostoevsky based some of their works on the dark side of St. Petersburg. And today I want to show you one of these dark sides, the residential area Kupchina, the district of St. Petersburg where I live right now. So how come did such faceless and same type areas for living begin to appear in such a beautiful city as St. Petersburg? Let's figure it out. So after the damage caused by the World War II, many cities in Soviet Union were completely destroyed. And Soviet society faced a really big problem of housing shortage. And even despite the huge population decline during the 4 war years, there still was not enough housing for everyone. People lived in barracks, communal apartments and dormitories. They did not have their own housing. The exit out of this situation was obvious. The country needed to build new housing as quickly as possible at the lowest cost. The program to improve the housing was launched by Nikita Khrushchev, former premier of Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union began the mass construction of houses that led to the standardized panel buildings that look almost identical to each other, and it filled residential areas from Kaliningrad to Vladivostok. These residential buildings were called Khrushchevka. They mostly had 5 floors, no elevators because they were expensive, and the apartments had a very small kitchen of about 4.5 to 6 square meters. The most widespread materials were reinforced concrete panels. The construction of one building took just 2 weeks, and in less than 10 years, 1 in 4 Soviet families was provided with their own apartments. The apartments in these houses were quite small, but for the Soviet people who were so tired of living in cramped barracks and communal houses their whole life, these small apartments became happiness and the opportunity to arrange a personal life without prying eyes. People settled in ready-to-live housing. There already were electricity, a bath and a toilet, and a stove in the kitchen. People only had to buy their own furniture. It is also very important to mention that housing in Soviet Union was given to people for free. People couldn't buy or sell their apartments at that time. And only after the collapse of the USSR in 1991, people were able to privatize their homes, also for free, after which the owners could sell and buy their homes. But let's go back to the Soviet Union for now. By the end of the 1960s, panel Khrushchevkas were replaced by Brezhnevkas, another type of houses that were named after Khrushchev's successor, Leonid Brezhnev. At that time, technological developments made it possible to build cheap 9, 12 and even 16-story residential panel buildings that had elevators, garbage chutes and a bit larger apartments. Even though this technology was cheap, but made for safe and long-lasting buildings. And in the short run, these panel houses began to appear throughout the new districts of Moscow, St. Petersburg and other cities, making all the residential areas look very similar. In 1986, Mikhail Gorbachev, a former president of the Soviet Union, promised that by 2000 every family would have their own apartment, but after the fall of the USSR, the era of free state housing has come to an end. Nevertheless, these days, 80% of Russia's urban residents live in high-rise buildings, most of which are still the same Soviet houses. Modern urbanists say that such typical gloomy housing blocks are depressing and have a negative impact on the psyche, and I totally agree with them. But despite the gloominess of these houses and the district overall, these residential areas are still very convenient to live in. And why is it so? I will tell you just a little bit later in this video. And right there you can see one of the central streets of Kupchino district. It's called Budapeshtskaya, and it's located right next to all this. And this is how people who live in these houses in this neighborhood are taking care of the surroundings that they live in. For example, right there they left a note for someone's named Valery, and they ask him, please don't touch the tree because nothing is left of it anymore, so please don't touch it and leave it alone. And I assume that there's another one for the same person. Let's check. Yes, it's also for Valery, and it says pretty much the same thing. And this is not a swamp in the forest, guys. This is just a territory right outside of a house where people live. This is kids' clinic right next to the road, and this is this road Budapeshtska up closer. You can see it's a little more crowded here, a lot more life, a lot more light.
I need to be stronger for my
Most of clinics in Russia are free. They are sponsored by the government, so it's a good opportunity for people in Russia to get some medical help when they need it. Hello everybody, welcome to the future. I just wanted to show you how different this area looks like during two different seasons. This is the late spring, and before I was showing you the late fall. And this is the best time to be here. Apple trees are blooming, cherry birds trees are blooming. The smell is incredible, everything is becoming green. And this is one of the good sides of this area. Before it looked so dark and depressing, and now it looks like you're in a magical forest. I just wanted to show you that there is good sides of every place, even a dark and depressive place that you saw earlier, how good it can look like if it's in the right time and in the right weather. Remember this alley, guys? It doesn't even look that scary anymore when it's full of greens. How do you like this car, guys? Somebody actually driving it. And guys, do you remember just 6 months ago there was a lot of garages, and they're all gone now, completely removed, and we will see what's gonna be instead of them later on. This is a kids' playground from the 80s. What do you guys think of this? Hello, Soviet Union. Do you see the size? Like, what kind of kid is this meant for? And that is how the modern kids' playground looks like. Much better, isn't it? And this part, like this little part right here, this one, is also the old one from the 80s. And in these bags, if you're wondering, they are fallen leaves from the last year. And right now I'm standing in front of the bird cherry tree. And in Russia there's one superstition related to a bird cherry tree. So, as saying goes, when the bird cherry tree blooms, it will be cold for the last time before the summertime comes. And we have anecdote in Russia related to bird cherry tree. So when the students from hot countries came to Russia, they asked Russians, why is it cold again? It's the end of May, it's supposed to be warm already. And Russians replied to them, well, because the bird cherry tree is blooming. And the students were like, well, if because of the bird cherry tree it's becoming cold, then why are you planting it at all? And as you can see, the bird cherry tree is fully bloomed, and maybe it doesn't seem cold today, but the entire next week promises to be really cold and rainy. So this superstition really does work, unfortunately. Hi guys, it's me again, and I'm with a new hairstyle. Today is 7th of July, middle of summer almost, and I just wanted to show you a little bit more of what we have here in this residential area. And I'm gonna start with a really nice park that's located right next to my house. And here's a nice little park. It's actually not that little. And right across the road there's another park which is like 5 times bigger than this one. And as you can see, today is a really hot day and people are swimming in the park, tanning everywhere. And I also wanted to show you these houses. It's a housing complex that's called Sofia. And this complex is brand new. It's 10 years old, if not less than that. And it's located right between these two parks, which is an awesome location in my opinion. But as you can see, they all look very similar to those old houses that used to be built during the Soviet era. They look a bit prettier than that, and inside they're much bigger and nicer, but they are similar looking to those old buildings that used to be built in the 80s. Oh, by the way guys, I came to this park because it's closer to my house, but just across the road behind these houses there is another park which is a lot bigger than this one. And in that park people are actually jet skiing, like driving boats and stuff like this. It's a really cool view, especially if you're like in a quiet residential area and then someone is jet skiing in the little lake. It's really cool, but I will not show it to you today, but just trust me that there's people jet skiing right across the road away from me. It's too hot today, and it's also still quite early afternoon, so people did not come out yet, but normally all this field is full of people just standing in the middle of the park. And here as well. And here's the monument of the warriors of the Afghanistan war. It's also in the same park, right at the beginning. And what is this masterpiece? This house looks absolutely absurd to me. Here's a sport club. Looks like this building was built in the 80s as well. And a tennis court right outside of the sport club. That definitely needs a renovation. Oh yeah, the sport club right outside of the yard. All these residential areas are very convenient to live in. Like there is a kids playground right there. There is a kindergarten. There's schools everywhere. Pretty much every yard has their own kindergarten or their own school. And by yard I mean, I don't really know how to explain it in English, but yard in Russia means like that there's several houses, and outside of them is 1 yard. Make sense? I hope it does. And this is the School of Arts for kids. It's a place where kids can get additional education in artistic fields like drawing, sculpture, and stuff like this. And it's also free. Do you know them, guys? And there is another kindergarten, guys. Kindergarten. I cannot pronounce this word. One of the things I really like about residential areas like this one is that, first of all, it's really green. During spring and summertime it looks really nice. Not so nice during the winter time, as you saw earlier. The kids are loud. Also, the houses are located really far from each other, which leaves it a big territory where you can walk with your kids, also with your dogs. And pretty much every yard has their own school and kindergarten. It has a lot of positive aspects, which makes the life in residential areas like this one very convenient, but it also has a lot of negative aspects as well. Look, guys, it's almost like living in the forest in this particular area, but it's not a forest. So here's one house and here's another one. It must be scary to walk here during winter time, as the sun sets pretty early. At 3:34 p.m. during winter time, it's already dark. It's also quite cheap to rent an apartment in areas like this. For example, I rent a one-bedroom apartment for approximately 25,000 rubles a month, which is why I live here. And here's another little park. And here's my clinic that I go to. It's also free clinic. This building is built in 70s or 80s. I'm not sure which date exactly, but I feel like inside it didn't change since then at all. They haven't done any reconstruction to it, renovation. I'm not gonna go inside because I don't want to scare you off, guys. But just know that this is my clinic. This residential area is located not in the city center, but it's only 5 metro stations away from the city center, which is really nice and convenient as well. And this is the alley on the way to school. It's a school where kids go from 1st until 11th grade. In Russia we don't really have this high school, middle school, beginner school. It's usually just one building and we just call it school. And this is another sports center. This one is right next to my house. Looks like it has some gymnastics, some CrossFit studios. So, of course, living in the area like this has a lot of advantages. For example, it's nice and green during spring and summertime. It's pretty cheap to rent a place here. For example, one-bedroom apartment will cost you from 20,000 rubles to 25,000 rubles a month. But if you want to know my opinion, I prefer living in the city center. And please tell me, what do you think? Would you rather live in the city center, in the downtown of the city as well? Or you would rather stay in somewhere like this, where it's quiet, it's convenient, everything is around, and you can get access to pretty much anything within one area? Please let me know. And as nice and green as it is right now, unfortunately it doesn't last very long, maybe for about 5 months, and then after that it will be cold, gloomy, rainy, dark again, like right after the leaves fell off, it's not gonna be nice. And unfortunately this period lasts a lot longer than the nice period, so pretty much the entire time here doesn't look like a fairy tale. So I hope you learned something new today about where and how the Russians actually live and why is it so. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!